Welcome, and thank you all for joining us here today for the third session of our 5th annual Global Conference on Energy Efficiency. I'm Melanie Slade, and I lead the Energy Efficiency and Emerging Economies work here at the IEA, and I'm delighted to be your moderator today. I'd also just like to note for everybody who's listening that it is International Women in Engineering Day, sorry. And thank you all for joining us here today for the third session of our 5th annual Global Conference on Energy Efficiency. I'm Melanie Slade, and I lead the Energy Efficiency and Emerging Economies work here at the IEA, and I'm delighted to be your moderator today. I'd also just like to note for everybody who's listening that it is International Women in Engineering Day, sorry. And thank you all for joining us here today for the third session of our 5th annual Global Conference on Energy Efficiency. I'm Melanie Slade, and I lead the Energy Efficiency and Emerging Economies work here at the IEA, and I'm delighted to be your moderator today. I'd also just like to note for everybody who's listening that it is International Women in Engineering Day, sorry. And thank you all for joining us here today for the session of our 5th annual Global Conference on Energy Efficiency. Economies work here at the IEA, and I'm delighted to be your moderator today.
Melanie, I take it you're working on a technical issue.
Yeah, so we're having a little bit of a technical issue and we're about to start again. Yeah. Okay, so apologies for that. I'd just like to say also that for those of you who've been following us since our first session at 8 o'clock this morning in Paris, I think you'll agree that we've already had some insightful discussions about the role of energy efficiency in our sustainable recovery plans. Yeah, so we're having and our executive director coined a new phrase this morning when he referred to energy efficiency as a jobs machine. So in this session, we're delighted to invite a dynamic group of leaders to talk about global best practice to promote energy efficiency in the COVID-19 recovery context and beyond. So we encourage our audience to join in as well. If you have questions for this session, please send them through to the email address, which is energy.efficiency@iea.org. Our team will be monitoring the questions and hopefully we'll have time to address them through the discussion session at the end of this session. We've already had some really interesting comments, some very lively debate on social media, and I'd particularly like to thank Luke Menzel from the Energy Efficiency Council of Australia and Larissa Paredes from Atlanta for their major contributions. They're our key contributors so far. And we will also continue to provide opportunities for you to participate through the day through online surveys. So if you haven't already done so, could you please go to the Menti site, so that's menti.com, and enter the passcode that's shown on the screen. That's 541756. And as we did in the last session, we'd like to find out a little more about you, what type of organization you represent. So please give us your answers on the Menti platform now. And while we're waiting for those answers to come in, I'd just like to say that we had more than 3,000 people register for this event. And this morning we've had more than 1,000 people interacting so far. And we're already, in terms of the audience that we had in the first session, the majority were from industry and business, followed by government and international organizations. And that's, of course, really good for us because we need industry and business to invest for energy efficiency, and we need governments and international organizations to help create that enabling environment. However, it looks like at the moment, anyway, we have a slightly different balance here, and the lunchtime session is clearly the session for the international organizations. So we'll be taking a look at these answers, and this will help us with our targeting of our communications and our analysis in the future. But we'll leave that now and we'll move on to our keynote speakers. So we've got a fantastic lineup here. This session, as I said, on learning from global best practice. And one of the things we'd like to tease out with this session is, does it matter where we come from? Does our energy efficiency policy setting need to be similar or different? How do we adapt? How do we learn from each other? Does it matter if a country's an oil producer or a manufacturer of products? So we'd like to try and tease these sorts of issues out from this session. And we're kicking off with Mr. Adam Sieminski, President of the King Abdullah Petroleum Studies and Research Centre in Saudi Arabia. He's a member of our Global Commission, and we're grateful for his participation and the many useful ideas he shared through that process. So, Mr. Sieminski, if I can turn over to you, the floor's yours.
Thank you, Melanie. I'm delighted actually to hear about International Women in Engineering Day. My daughter Ellen is an industrial engineer, and I've actually been somewhat jealous of her career. She's actually practicing engineering on an assembly line, which is just kind of great. Melanie, whether we like it or not, COVID-19 has changed our lives, and we have been forced to pick up the tools of the digital age. Like we're doing today. Technology companies and sustainability solutions are thriving while the old economy struggles. The pandemic has profoundly impacted the energy sector, destabilizing energy markets, especially oil markets, and raising concerns about access. Energy efficiency, with its deep connections to modernization and sustainability, I think can help. In response to COVID-19, the G20 leaders met under the Saudi Arabian presidency in an extraordinary session to emphasize the need to enhance global cooperation, asserting the need to work closely together to protect human life, restore global economic stability, lay out the solid foundations for a strong, sustainable, balanced, and inclusive growth outlook. Energy efficiency can play a role, central role in this recovery. In the context of what the energy minister here in Saudi Arabia, Prince Abdulaziz bin Salman, calls the circular carbon economy, energy efficiency falls under the reduce category of the 4 R's: reduce, reuse, recycle, and remove. Among the many CCE initiatives in Saudi Arabia that CAPSARC has identified, some 2/3 fall into the reduce classification, and energy efficiency programs are a critical part of that. For example, the Saudi Electricity Company is supplementing investment on the supply side of generation and transmission with additional spending on demand management. The smart metering project here is a core element of the kingdom's digital transformation strategy and aims to install 10 million smart meters, more than 1/3 of which are to be made in Saudi Arabia. In thinking about electricity demand, and we were talking a little bit about this before the webinar kicked off, cooling must be a key component of the energy efficiency agenda. Worldwide electricity demand from cooling is set to soar alongside greater access to energy in Africa and Asia, as well as in milder climates such as Europe, as they warm as a result of climate change. And I heard somebody mention that it was very warm in Paris today. Cooling is also a key vector of economic development. Moving forward, governments need to consider phasing out the most inefficient technologies such as window air conditioning units while accelerating the adoption of best available technologies. In fact, there are many opportunities for improvement. For example, upgrading a steel or a petrochemical plant can not only improve its energy efficiency, but it could open up the prospect of producing new, higher quality materials, stronger steel, better plastics, the building blocks of more advanced manufacturing. Energy efficiency can be part of modernization, just as we observe digitization helping us adapt to COVID-19 and create new goods and services. The future is most likely to be one where more, not less, energy is consumed. Even in the aftermath of COVID-19, energy use is projected to grow significantly with economies and populations. The challenge is how to make this sustainable from a climate change and resource standpoint. Two main drivers work together to bring about improvements in energy efficiency: strong regulations and appropriate energy prices. The kingdom now has 80 energy efficiency initiatives supported by 13 teams that are targeting major energy consuming sectors. The Saudi Energy Efficiency Center has facilitated these initiatives and focused on the three main energy consuming sectors. That's industry, buildings, and transportation, which account for over 90% of the country's energy consumption. I noticed during the opening, one of the sessions this morning, that there was a very, very strong vote among the attendees for building standards and providing incentives to retrofit buildings as part of the jobs creation program coming out of the COVID crisis. Minimum energy performance standards for appliances and the setting of tougher benchmarks for industry have proven successful in many countries, including here in Saudi Arabia. The Saudi government has coordinated major compliance activities to try to halt imports of non-compliant, inefficient air conditioning units. And such trade continues to be a global issue that could be addressed by international groups. Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund has financed a national energy services company called Tarshid with a mandate to develop, fund, and manage energy efficiency projects and to catalyze a vibrant energy efficiency industry. Many of the initiatives that Tarshid is supporting, among those is the rooftop solar and thermal PV solutions. This is actually a good example of how to take advantage of the synergies between renewable energy and energy efficiency. Regarding prices, the Saudi government began to reform pricing in 2016 to reduce wasteful energy and water use and to diversify sources of government revenue. This was motivated by the government's wish to move from a system of energy pricing based on very low-cost fuel production towards international benchmarks, but doing so at a pace that works locally. Finally, international cooperation. And the Commission is a great example of that. Offers national governments a chance to learn the world's best policy experience, to know what's worked and what hasn't worked, and to achieve energy efficiency goals. So in conclusion, I'd like to thank you for hosting today's webinar. I'd like to thank the International Energy Agency and Fatih Birol and all of the members of the Commission for the contributions that they're making to this very worthwhile event. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You mentioned in particular the G20 presidency and the work that you and your team at CAPSARC have been doing to support the kingdom. I wonder if has that taught you anything particular about the sharing of best practice internationally? Are there any mechanisms or any themes that have come out more strongly than others?
Well, one of the things that I've discovered is, first of all, how interested people are in energy efficiency, and let me go back to the idea of the 4 R's. I mean, efficiency falls under reduce, and that also includes renewables, even things like alternative fuels and nuclear. But things like recycle, reuse, and ultimately remove. Remove could be biological solutions. It could also be others. I think that there's a incredibly strong interest among the G20 delegates and nations to try to use all of the tools in the toolbox to address climate change, to try to find ways to pragmatically move this issue off of the negotiating table and into an area where we're actually getting things done and contributing to solutions.
Thanks, Adam. That's really encouraging to hear, and perhaps we'll come back to some of those thoughts when we have a discussion at the end of this session. So next, I'm delighted to welcome another great friend of the IEA's, Mr. Abhay Bakre, Director General of the Bureau of Energy Efficiency in India. India, of course, is one of the key influential economies in terms of energy use because of its growing economy, and also, of course, the sheer size of its population. But also because India has designed and implemented some of the most successful large-scale energy efficiency policies that are being shared around the world now. So, Mr. Bakre, over to you.
Yeah, good morning and good afternoon to all of you. I hope I am audible now. Okay, so let me first compliment the IEA team, led by Dr. Fatih, Brian, Mail, and all the colleagues, having a wonderful cooperation with India, with all the departments, and especially with the Bureau of Energy Efficiency. Let me also appreciate the efforts for this fifth annual Global Conference on Energy Efficiency. So, friends, fellow panelists, and ladies and gentlemen, all the listeners, let's discuss the energy efficiency, the role of energy efficiency. How can we come out with the current situation and the post-COVID economic recovery, opportunities to create jobs, opportunities to address the climate change mitigation, and also to make sure that we don't further waste energy wherever is possible and wherever is feasible. Let's strive ourselves to implement policies and programs so that we can save energy wherever we can. So in India, Bureau of Energy Efficiency is the nodal agency leading this movement. We are part of the government, Ministry of Power, but we are also getting cooperation from all other ministries, Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Petroleum, Ministry of Coal, Ministry of Road Transport, Civil Aviation, etc. As part of Bureau of Energy Efficiency, for the past 15 years, we have had successes, especially in the appliance sectors, followed by a big program, Perform, Achieve, and Trade, globally acknowledged as one of the best program in the industry sector, with a lot of achievements. So far, we have covered 1,000 large industries, energy from the energy-intensive sectors, so that they are achieving targets of energy consumption reduction in terms of specific energy consumption. We have started including more and more sectors. In the second cycle, we included refineries, distribution, utilities, and railways. Railways is one of the single largest consumer in India. They also performed very well by the end of the second cycle last year, 2019. Now we have included the new sectors like buildings, petrochemicals, chemicals, and certain more cement sector units like grinding units, etc. We are in the process of including aviations like airports. We want to include hospitals. We want to include sugar factories, and similarly many more industry partners. Now, industry sector in India are quite excited based on this scheme. This scheme has a very good efforts towards capacity building, technology upgradation. Not many experts, including the best international organizations, are able to share their practices. We are able to get new technologies all over the world, so that most of our industries are started becoming the best in the world. Some of the cement plants are having the most energy efficient plant in the world. We are also following the same with the iron and steel sector, fertilizer sector, and all other energy intensive sector. Similarly, now the distribution utilities have started making efforts in reducing their losses, as well as the refineries have done a wonderful job in saving a lot of their fuel and losses as part of their processes. Now, with this effort, industry sectors are giving much more opportunities for us to move towards 4 Rs, as just now CAPSAC had just now explained about, and what we are discussing in G20 ESWG meetings, the reduce, reuse, recycle, and remove. But in that procedure, we are also trying to shift more and more towards the renewable efforts. As you know, India has accomplished almost 100% electrification in household. That means that the electricity availability, which is now becoming almost reliable 24/7, and with surplus capacity, we are in a position to shift most of our conventional processes towards the electrified processes. That requires a lot of technology upgradation, and more we are from the supply side, we are moving towards the renewable energy. That means these technologies will gradually become greener technology. That also gives us opportunity to use green hydrogen, as well as use of solar, thermal, and similar other renewable-based applications. On the domestic side, so far the buildings sector is second largest sector consuming energy. because the industry, we are still at the highest number. But in building sector, the appliances have done a great job. The success of LED lights through our Ujala program, but not only that, the Star LED program, now we have covered 26 appliances so far in last 12 years have given a great amount of savings, which is almost half the savings we achieved in the country. Now, the appliance sectors are giving more and more opportunities on the SME side. The new designs for the manufacturers, vendors, etc. They are coming up with new push to offer more and more products at a competitive rates. The consumers have responded very well for the appliances sector. That's the great achievement, that the entire population is now going towards more and more stars, as we call it, more stars, more saving. But that is motivating the vendors to come out with new design. That is especially happening on the cooling sector. And when we have a comprehensive India cooling action plan released by the government, the cooling has a big role to play in saving future energy, because the cooling sector is going to have almost threefold demands now onwards for the next 30 years. On the cooling reward, global cooling reward, which is a Vision Innovation program, which is underway, we expect in India that new technology and new designs of air conditioners will come up, and that will have a very good impact.
Mr. Bakre, we've lost you for a moment there. I think we might move on, and if we can get you back, we will catch up with you on the panel in a few minutes. So sorry about that. So next we welcome Mr. Tomohiro Christensen, Climate Ambassador from Denmark. We're delighted to have you with us today, Ambassador, and I would particularly like to take this opportunity to thank you for your support for the energy efficiency and emerging economies work we do here at the IEA. Ambassador Christensen, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Melanie, and thank you for inviting me to participate in this very important meeting. Sympathy to all those who have been touched by the pandemic, and I hope you and your loved ones are safe and sound. I'll start with sort of the global overview, but taking a different angle than my two predecessors. When we were locked down, we were headed off for takeoff in terms of campaigning for increased climate ambition in order to achieve the objectives of the Paris Agreement and the 2030 Development Agenda at COP26 in Glasgow. And as we now are slowly re-emerging as a global community out of the crisis, we really have three key messages today as we refocus on COP26. And those three are ambition, ambition, and ambition. Let me expand on what I mean in terms of COP26, our national efforts, and then the international dimension. First, on COP26, the postponement to November 2021 is both a challenge and an opportunity for raising ambition. It is a global challenge to maintain momentum for the green transition, and we all have to work hard to get back on track after COVID. Energy efficiency measures play a vital role in achieving the SDGs and Paris. And according to the analysis put out by you, Melanie, and Fatih, energy efficiency measures are estimated to provide almost 40% of the emission gap between our current trajectory and the trajectory to climate neutrality in 2050. Even if climate change is not top of the agenda, energy efficiency measures represent a huge opportunity. They are labor intensive, retrofitting existing buildings and ensuring that new constructions are the state-of-the-art energy efficient will create around 15 jobs for every $1 million of capital investment. And I think the Indian colleague and the colleague from Saudi also highlighted other sectors where investments create jobs. And you mentioned Fatih's pun this morning about energy efficiency as a job machine. And that's why the EU, the European Union, will focus on energy efficiency and retrofitting as we turn the European Green Deal into both a strategy for recovery and for economic transformation. We have to build back better and greener, and energy efficiency plays a vital part in that regard. Second, let me just turn to what we've done in Denmark during lockdown. We've been busy working on raising our national ambition through the national climate law, which last week was adopted by Parliament. We are now legally bound to cut emissions by 70% in 2030 on the 1990 baseline and to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050. That is historically ambitious and difficult, as with known policies and technologies, we currently only know how to reduce Denmark's greenhouse gas emissions by roughly 60%. Therefore, we have spent the lockdown composing holistic and comprehensive climate action plans, which will see the climate law put into action. Close cooperation with the private sector is key in that regard. Therefore, the government has established 13 climate partnerships with the Danish business sector back in November last year. The partnerships presented their recommendations right when we locked down on how they will contribute to 70% target. And quite a number of those have a strong focus on energy efficiency in both buildings and industry, including the cement industry and other heavy industries, shipping, air transport, and so on. Not wasting any time, the government has already reached 2 deals in Parliament that will cut 3.4 million tons of emissions by 2030. And that's within energy, waste, and industry. And the last agreement was reached late Sunday night, early Monday morning this week. They will ensure a massive boost of energy efficiency measures in industry and buildings, including increasing public funds for energy efficiency measures, ambitious standards for energy savings in public buildings, and a special focus on digitization in energy renovation, as well as making the waste sector carbon neutral by 2030. As part of the recovery, the Danish government has set up plans to invest more than 4 billion euro in the social housing sector. The threefold purpose of the proposal is to kickstart the economy, create jobs, and promote green solutions. 85 to 90% of the new projects will incorporate green solutions such as more energy efficient windows, insulation, heating systems, etc. The cooling mentioned by the colleague from Saudi is not that important in Denmark. It's more the heating that we focus on. We expect these measures to lower energy consumption by 500 gigawatt, equivalent to the heat consumption from about 40,000 apartments. And it is expected to create 3,300 new jobs this year and 7,800 new jobs next year, and really demonstrates the link between the green transition and the economic recovery. Let me then turn to the international dimension. We have sought to promote the green recovery agenda from the beginning, and that included the Minister for Climate and Energy, Dan Jorgensen, co-hosting an IEA ministerial roundtable with Fatih Birol, the Executive Secretary, on green recovery with a special focus on energy efficiency, gathering ministers, CEOs, and executives from around the globe to share thoughts. And we continue to work multilaterally and bilaterally for higher ambition and ensuring a global clean energy transition. We strongly support the work that you lead, Melanie, on energy efficiency in emerging economies, and thank you for your shout out to that at the beginning. We are very happy about that work and the work your team is doing. A key part of the program, which should not be underestimated, is the training of government officials from around the world to better leverage efficiency opportunities. And I believe through your training, we have supported more than 1,500 participants all around the world. These events provide unique opportunities to learn how to develop and improve national energy efficiency policies and to enhance best practice amongst policymakers. Bilaterally, we are engaged in 16 energy partnerships bilaterally with countries. And let me use this opportunity to pay thanks both to China and India, with whom we have engaged in partnerships for several years, and also to Japan. I see a Japanese colleague here with whom we are in touch about a new energy partnership. Let me wrap up by giving an example from the Danish-Vietnamese partnership on energy efficiency. We worked with the Ministry of Industry and Trade to introduce new initiatives to promote energy efficiency in Vietnam's industry. Based on our experience, we can over the next 5 years reduce emissions in Vietnam by 3 million tons annually. That is equivalent to 37% of our annual emissions, or 91% CO2 emissions from Danish industry. So, Melanie, in conclusion, as we recover from the crisis and rebuild momentum for ambition at COP26, energy efficiency needs to be a key part of our planning and implementation. We stand ready to do our part at home and through international cooperation, and we truly believe that together we can get back on track and create both growth, jobs, and a global green transition while lowering emissions. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. And it's really clear that Denmark shows incredible leadership in its domestic action. And I'm intrigued to see how you and your teams have been spending the lockdown so constructively in terms of developing new energy efficiency policies and plans. So it'd be fantastic to be able to share those when the details are available. I'm sure people around the world will be very interested in seeing what you've come up with there. And I think you're also famous for your collaboration with industry. This partnership between government and industry is really important, and Denmark seems to really get that right. You support emerging economies through your bilateral programs, as you said, and also through supporting agencies like the IEA. Could you just explain why you put so much emphasis on that international collaboration, particularly with the emerging economies?
Well, I think it was, in building the ambition that we're talking about, under the Paris Agreement, for example, capacity building and technology, knowledge sharing is a vital part of implementation. I think if you look at the 4 tracks of global climate talks, mitigation, adaptation, finance, and capacity building. Capacity building is often the one that is overlooked, but that is maybe the most important one, because that is where we as developed countries have the opportunity to share our knowledge and the learning. And we are very happy to do so and think it's an obligation of ours. We have at the Danish Energy Agency a special division with staff trained to do the outreach, to do the international cooperation through working with you and other people in the multilateral energy space, but also through the bilateral outreach. So when we engage in the bilateral cooperation, we have a backup team in Copenhagen that supports the experts in the field who take people on training, on courses, show them the way we work both on energy efficiency and renewables, and sort of give them hands-on training by the people who are doing the work here. We don't use consultants, we don't go through external partners. It's a government-to-government effort.
Thank you very much. And I think that's what makes it truly special, the government-to-government relationships. Policymakers like working with other policymakers, and it makes the messages all so much more powerful. So thank you very much for that. And thank you for sharing that experience. So our final keynote speaker in this session is Mr. Tomohiro Kaneko, Deputy Commissioner for International Affairs for the Agency of Natural Resources and Energy in Japan's Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry. So Mr. Kaneko, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, for giving me the floor. And thank you very much for inviting me as one of the keynote speakers to the IEA's Annual Global Conference on Energy Efficiency. I'd like to congratulate IEA for holding the 5th Global Conference via online successfully at this difficult time. I understand that this conference is one of the series of meetings by the IEA providing inputs toward the IEA's Clean Energy Transition Summit on July 9th. Energy efficiency is an important policy area where Japan has been engaged actively for more than 40 years. In my speech today, I would like to share lessons learned from our experiences and recommendations in light of discussions in the G20 ministerial meeting in Karizawa last year. First, I would like to talk about the energy efficiency policy in Japan. Since the first oil crisis in 1973, as a result of tremendous countrywide effort on energy efficiency, Japan has achieved both economic growth and energy efficiency. In fact, GDP has grown 2.6 times in these 40 years, while the energy consumption has increased only 1.2 times. This means that during this period, the energy efficiency rate has improved by 35%. We are currently aiming to achieve the same level of improvement on energy efficiency under the energy mix in 2030, while aiming to realize the decarbonized society as ultimate goal. The characteristics of Japanese energy efficiency policy is to encourage action through the collaboration between private and public sectors, combining regulations and financial supports. As for the regulations, the Energy Efficiency Act requires companies to report their energy consumptions and set energy efficiency target for improvement. On the other hand, the Japanese government supports the introduction of energy efficient equipment and R&D activities through subsidies and tax incentives. In addition, we introduced the Top Runner program, which requires manufacturers and importers to improve energy efficiency of appliances and materials toward the most efficient level, including labeling program for influencing the consumer behavior. Through these various approaches, we have promoted energy efficiency intensively. Rather than reducing energy consumption, utilizing energy in more efficient manner is a key to achieve both energy efficiency and economic activities. The government of Japan lifted the emergency declaration at the end of May, and economic activities have been recovering gradually in Japan. At this stage, it is important to promote investment on energy efficiency steadily. For this purpose, the government secured tens of billions of yen, roughly equivalent to some $100 billion to support enterprises' investment on energy efficiency and has already started to implement some programs. I would like to share some of them today. First, in order to support industry's energy efficiency activities, we provide financial support for introducing or renovating equipment in factories and buildings. Through this program, we aim to realize both energy efficiency and economic stimulus. Second, among our supports for residential sector, we have been working mainly on houses and building sectors. For instance, supporting mechanism on net zero energy houses deployment and demonstration program on net zero energy buildings. In addition, we provide financial support on advanced demonstration projects utilizing energy resources of demand side through digital technology. In these projects, we create virtual power plant by functioning various energy resources from demand side, including storage batteries, electric vehicles, and demand response through IoT, which controls the balance between supply and demand of electricity. We also aim to shift peak demand by charging EV batteries depending on electricity wholesale price. It is expected that COVID-19 will continue to affect our lives and economic activities in the long term. This will promote remote work, digital transformation, and automations in the society, and it might affect energy demand as well. Considering these changes, we need to improve our energy efficiency policy further. Now let me turn to the international aspect. With continuing to promote energy efficiency policy domestically, Japan commits to facilitate the international discussion on promoting energy efficiency, namely the global energy efficiency benchmark. The G20 energy ministers took note of this in Karuizawa last year for analyzing energy efficiency in the energy-intensive industries and equipment, and for boosting energy efficiency at the global level. Japan will continue to contribute to this program proactively. You might wonder what the benchmark program is. Japan introduced it in 2009. Under this program, the energy efficiency targets are set for each industry, and relevant companies in such industry needed to achieve it. Currently, the program covers energy-intensive industries such as metal, chemical, cement, pulp, which account for 70% of energy consumption in the industry sector. In detail, we set energy consumption per production as a benchmark indicator from industry to industry, together with numerical target of such indicator and follow up on the achievement of participating companies every year. According to the report in 2019 fiscal year, the reported value against the benchmark target was improved compared with the last fiscal year in the sectors such as special steel, electric power generation, paper, paperboard, petrochemicals. From the company's viewpoint, the benchmark target for industry will make it possible for them to recognize their current status of energy consumption and consider measures to improve energy efficiency. This program is also useful for the government to find issues for industries in the medium and long term and utilize this information for the policy planning. Currently, not only Japan, but also other countries such as the US, EU, China, India, Canada, and Saudi Arabia introduced the benchmark program in their own ways. We believe it is effective for all of us to promote energy efficiency policy based on objective data and global perspective. In this context, the global benchmark analysis is quite meaningful effort. The workshops on global benchmark by the IEA have been held twice, September and November last year, where each country pointed out the importance of benchmarking. However, we recognize that the issues of data collection and data availability still remain in order to proceed the analysis further. We understand that one-size-fits-all cannot be applied to each country's energy efficiency policy, and it is important for each country to take an adequate policy depending on its own situation. Considering the current situation of slowing down the energy efficiency at global level, the work of international data analysis on energy efficiency is quite useful for each country to know where we are in the world and consider its own energy efficiency policy. Therefore, under the leadership of the IEA, Japan would like to advance this work, cooperating with all of you. In terms of data collection and data availability, we are currently discussing with the IEA on better way forwards, including case study on energy-intensive industries such as iron and cement. In light of the importance of the effectiveness of this work, we would like to request all relevant countries and industries to be actively engaged in this work. What I explained here is only a part of our activities and experiences, but I hope it could contribute to today's discussion. Japan will make utmost effort continuously to promote energy efficiency with the IEA. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much indeed. And it's been an honor for the IEA to support Japan through that global benchmarking experience. And we've been promoting this benchmarking, of course, in our work, particularly with the emerging economies, with countries like Brazil. And going forward, we plan to do more work on this area with Mr. Bakre in India as well. I'd just like to ask Mr. Bakre, would you like to, did you finish what you wanted to say? Is there anything you'd like to add before we move on to our panel discussion?
Yeah, thank you. Just 1 minute maybe. And my apologies for the poor connection that I timed out. Yeah, the only thing which I wanted to mention is the building sector, which is very high consuming in most of the European countries, developed countries. In India, the building sector will have gradually the larger share in the energy consumption in the country. For that, the energy consumption building codes, even though we have published this in the India, but then it has to be adopted at every city level, every municipality level. So that's a very important thing which we would like to get experience from the most of the countries who are working, like Japan said, net zero building, and similarly other. The last but most importantly, the SME sector, the technologies which are coming and they are quite evaluated and implemented by the large industries. But the SMEs, they have very little time, they have very little knowledge or the manpower or resources to actually think about the energy efficiency. For India, the SME sector is quite elaborate, and we need a lot of efforts to put the SME sector, who are also a great employment potential sector, and that's why we believe that post-COVID, the SME sector should have focus. We are in always having cooperation with every country, any bilateral or multilateral, to know what the SMEs should do in improving their bottom line, in improving their energy consumption, so that they become more competitive and they become more efficient in terms of their processes, so that they can have higher profits and more economic strength in that. So these are the 2 points which I could not speak at. Thank you so much for my opportunity.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bakre. And we look forward to working with you and our colleagues in Japan to continue with the benchmarking work in the coming months and years. So I'd like to take a pause there and thank all of our keynote speakers for their interventions thus far. In a moment, we're going to move on to a panel discussion, but in the first instance, we're going to switch back to another one of our survey questions with Menti. So if you could go back to the Menti app, please, or link on the internet at www.menti.com using code 541756 and answer the next question for us, which is, which of the following energy efficiency topics would benefit most from greater global best practice sharing? So if people could answer this question, please. We'd very much like this to use this as a segue into our discussion session. So while people are answering that question, I will start to introduce the discussion because I think it's highly relevant. What we want to do here, as I said earlier, is see if we can find the differences between sharing best practice in different circumstances. And one of the things that will be important will be these messages. Which ones are most important to which countries? Which ones are most important for regional collaboration? Are there differences? So it's looking to me like the team chose a very effective group of measures here because they're fairly equal in their ranking, except perhaps for behaviour change, which is getting a great deal of interest at the moment. And it's answers to questions like this that will help guide our work in the future. Okay, I think we'll leave that there and move on to the panel. Sorry, what we'd like to do here is to introduce 4 organisations that have a very broad range of stakeholders. They all have similarities to each other and they all have big differences. So we have Clay Nestler from the Alliance to Save Energy in the United States. This is a great example of a stakeholder-driven organisation that works in the context of supporting a federal system. We have Monica Frassoni, who is organising a similar type of organisation, but across a range of different countries instead of the federal organisation. We have Satish Kumar working with the Alliance for an Energy Efficient Economy in India. And of course, as we've talked about a lot, India is one of the major emerging economies with a huge growing economy and population at the same time, needing the services of that modern energy can provide. And not yet saturated that desire for those services. And then we have the manufacturing powerhouse that's China. So what we'd like to do is to kind of pick out the similarities and differences with these organizations. And I'm going to start by asking each of the panelists a question, and when I do that, they obviously have the opportunity to organize or introduce their organizations. So where we'd like to start is, how much do you think that energy efficiency is a global dialogue, or how much is it down to specific circumstances in a country or a region? And I'll start with Clay, if I may.
Thank you, Melanie. And thank the IEA, and congratulations to the Global Commission on your report recommendations, a very comprehensive and timely report. I hope everyone listening to this and their families are healthy and safe. The Alliance to Save Energy is a 43-year-old nonprofit based in Washington, D.C. It has 120 associate members from industry, utilities, government, and academia. It also has 15 bipartisan members of Congress. First, I'd like to provide a little context of where we are in the United States in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. Through studies over the past few years, the United States has over 3 million clean energy jobs. one of the largest segments of the economy. 2.3 million, or about 3/4 of those jobs, are in energy efficiency, by far the largest segment of the clean energy economy. Unfortunately and tragically, 432,000 of those jobs have been lost due to the pandemic and the economic recession which is underway. The United States, as you indicated, is unique from the other countries which are represented on the panel. It is a country with a federal and national system and 50 states plus other territories and the District of Columbia, where I currently live, which provides a unique dynamic into how energy efficiency policy is created and the driving of investment and interest in energy efficiency. Based on a study that we released last fall with our partners ACEEE, as well as the Business Council for Sustainable Energy in the United States, called the Energy Efficiency Impact Report, we did a review of key policies driving energy savings and cost savings in the United States. I'll quickly go through where these policies come from because it shows the diversity of the political landscape and policy landscape in the United States. The number one energy efficiency policy was vehicle efficiency standards, or CAFE standards, if you will. It contributed 9 quads worth of energy savings, and it is a national minimum efficiency standard which in some cases can be exceeded by state-based standards. Appliance and equipment standards, which have also been mentioned in earlier panels and presentations, are a key way of reducing energy use. 6 quads worth of energy through 2017 have been realized through those minimum efficiency standards. And again, states have some ability to exceed those standards above the minimum federal requirements. A lot of progress has been made through voluntary federal initiatives. The Energy Star program is well known and a best practice around the world, contributing 4 quads in savings through appliance labeling, Energy Star labels on industry, as well as buildings. A very effective program, voluntary, in the United States through the U.S. Department of Energy is the Better Plants program, where 12% of manufacturing energy footprint is covered through this program, saving 1.3 quads. A lot of the activity in the U.S. is sort of bottoms up. It involves states and cities putting in place policies to drive efficiency. Utility demand-side management programs invest over $8.3 billion a year in energy efficiency improvements, resulting in 2.5 quads worth of savings. 75% of utilities in the United States, authorized through their public utility commissions at a state level, have programs in place. Another state-based initiative is building codes. The federal government sets minimum model building energy efficiency codes, which are adopted by states and local jurisdictions. That's about 0.5 quad worth of savings. Another area that states become involved is putting in place enabling legislation for energy savings performance contracts. About $5 to $6 billion worth of investment a year in private money, not public money, private money goes into energy efficiency improvements to upgrade primarily public sector, public buildings, federal as well as state and local buildings. $5 billion investment translates into about 47,500 jobs. Of those, 40% are local subcontractor installer jobs, improving local economies. 40% are manufacturing jobs to produce the products and technology, and 20% are from the energy service providers themselves. So again, enabled through state legislation. Some of the greatest innovation, and I believe one of our best practices, is benchmarking, transparency, and new building performance standards. 12% of all square foot of commercial, institutional, and larger residential type of multifamily residential buildings are covered through benchmarking and transparency law. And many cities, including my own Washington, D.C. and New York, are basically translating this into regulations to require buildings meet either an energy intensity target or a carbon reduction target. New York program alone could result in $20 billion worth of investment through 2030 and a 13 times increase in the renovation rate of buildings. So we believe this will drive a lot of future. So everything from an individual city all the way up to the federal government is involved and leaning in on energy efficiency. Thank you for the opportunity of presenting.
Thank you very much, Clay, and for that example, like I said, of a federal system. And we'll come back to some questions for you when we get into the discussion in a few moments. But perhaps I could now turn to Monica, and the same sort of question for you. How is it doing this having this sort of function? How can you make more energy efficiency happen faster with your community when you're working across country borders rather than within a country?
Thank you very much. And first, let me thank the EIA for its work in making, over the last years, the agenda of energy efficiency credible. I must say that we, at the level of the European Union, have greatly used its studies, its numbers, to make this agenda stronger. And exactly as our sister organization in the US, we try very much to work certainly across borders, but very much at probably a not yet federal level, but a supranational level, because we do have European regulations that exist. And the effort of the EIA of making this agenda stronger has been greatly important for our business and civil society community. So very much thank you for that. Well, you know, if I have to take the example that was taken at the beginning of our session by Mr. Matur, where he said that energy efficiency is like a plane, I can say that as far as the European Union is concerned, we are in the middle of the effort to take off, basically. Because we are not yet in a position to be able to say that energy efficiency really displayed all its potential in order to make the clean energy transition real. And in terms of helping economies to overcome the COVID shock, I think that we still have a lot of things to do in order to achieve that goal that we will not be able to achieve without further regulation, financial and administrative and training measures. The European Union is an organization which is tied together by common political, legal and financial instruments expressed in regulations, targets, subsidies, incentives. And this is, of course, the case for energy efficiency. Well, in this very moment, we are in a very crucial and exciting time, because all these issues are being reconsidered and reformulated and relaunched. And therefore, there is a lot of political work that is going on in the business community, in the civil society, but also in the European institution and national institution, because that is really a work across border, in order to make sure that there is a right direction that all these recovery measures will take. So even if we cannot say that everything is done well, on the contrary, as I mentioned, I can mention 3 best practices that have a major potential global impact, if I have to answer to your question, that can be useful also for other areas of the world, above all if they will work. The first is certainly the European Green Deal. The European Green Deal is a plan in which energy efficiency has certainly a role, but which really describes a framework and a direction that is green, and it's a deal, and it's European. And I think that these 3 elements are all very important. In terms of energy efficiency, there are 3 parts that are particularly relevant. One is a sector integration strategy that will be published in July. The second is the Renovation Wave initiative that for all of us is probably key, because a lot of speakers talked about the relevance of buildings in energy efficiency implementation measures and in this capacity of being really transformative. While the Renovation Wave is for the European Union and its member state a major instrument to realize the effort of reducing emissions so much by 2050 as to make the continent climate neutral. So this is the biggest challenge that we have in front of us, and the Renovation Wave, the possibility of increasing by 3 times the renovation rate by now, is probably the biggest challenge that we as a community want to take up, beneath, of course, the energy efficiency in industry and in transport. But I think that the Renovation Wave will emerge as a major instrument for realizing this effort. And then, of course, there is the question of the revision of the current energy efficiency legislation, which is important. It goes back to 2012 and needs certainly to be revamped and reviewed by, in order to make it up to the climate targets that the European Union took up, and the ones that will take up even more in the next months. We aim, and we would like really that the European Union arrives to a 55% emission target reduction by 2030 in order to be able to reach its goal by 2050. The third point that is very important that was mentioned by Minister Turms is the European Union budget and recovery plan, which depend directly from COVID. If COVID would have not been there and the Green Deal would have not been there, this recovery plan would not be so strong and ambitious, even if we believe that there is still a problem and there is still a huge risk that is also to be taken into account, that this recovery plan will give a lot of resources, a major amount of resources to to activities that are not conducive to our goal of climate neutrality. And we believe that once again, there should be a clear earmarking, not only for climate activities, but also for renovation of building. Very briefly, and I will finish here, I think that what we need is to establish an upward 40% climate action target for the entire recovery plan and budget for the next 7 years in the European Union, and to explicitly exclude from EU funding all fossil fuel activities. And here I would like to mention one simple issue that for us is very interesting, but also worrying, and that is the emphasis that is taken on hydrogen as a major recipe for success. We do believe that there is a lot of space for hydrogen, above all in transport, but we believe that in building, what we have to do is to go back to existing technologies of increasing the efficiency of buildings and doing them in an enough scale so as to be able to reach the goal. So just in the conclusion, and by thanking you again, we have the framework. We have some important best practices, but in front of us, we also have a lot of work to be done to make all of this really able to deliver what we need in the next 20 to 30 years. Thank you. Grazie.
Thank you very much, Monica. And the world is watching Europe in the aspect of this renovation wave. Everybody knows that it's one of the most difficult nuts to crack in energy efficiency. We have this opportunity at the moment when we're expecting to see investment. And as people have mentioned throughout the day, not only does energy efficiency mean jobs, it means local jobs. So hopefully these things will come together, and at last we'll find the solutions that we need to the renovation issue for our older buildings. I'd now like to move on to Dr. Satish Kumar. Satish, you are representing one of the newest of this family of associations in a really complex environment. And perhaps you could share with us how much of the work that you're doing is very, very specific to India, and how much you're able to borrow and share with the international community. Satish, you're muted.
Yeah, thank you, Melanie, for the invitation. I think I would like to extend my sincere thanks to International Energy Agency. AEEE has been a beneficiary of working closely with International Agency, with the energy efficiency team under the guidance of Brian Motherway and Melanie Yu. And also we have benefited from the leadership role that many others have highlighted IEA has played in the energy sector in general, but also energy efficiency in particular. And this has again been in evidence today, I think, with the announcement of the Global Commission for Urgent Action on Energy Efficiency, which has hit all the right notes, in my opinion. And I'm confident that it is going to nudge or force countries to make energy efficiency actions on an urgent priority. A little bit about AEEE, as Melanie, you mentioned that we are very similar to Alliance to Save Energy or European Alliance to Save Energy. And we are a policy advocacy organization, but we do have a pretty strong research and analysis team. And we have been fortunate to be working very closely with the government of India and with the Indian industry over the past 11 years that we have been in existence. Some of the programs which we are really proud of that we have contributed to has been Bureau of Energy Efficiency and Niti Aayog's State Energy Efficiency Index program, where we have been a knowledge partner. We have been a leading knowledge partner in the development of India Cooling Action Plan. And that's a work that now we are taking internationally under the aegis of United Nations and helping develop national cooling action plan methodologies for other developing countries around the world. We are also very proud to be associated with Global Cooling Prize, which is a very unique program and a disruptive initiative which challenges the status quo in one of the most important appliance segments that is going to have an outsized impact on global greenhouse emissions. And there we are partnering with Department of Science and Technology. So AEEE, we have been working and active in the space for, as I said, 11 years. And as an input to the IEA Global Commission for fast tracking energy efficiency with urgent actions, we partnered with our sister organizations, ACEEE in the US and ECEEE in Europe. And we came out with 12 strategies after a comprehensive coverage of necessary policies to deliver efficiency around the globe. And I'm going to pick 3 of the strategies from that and just share some of the work that has been going on in India. The first one is related to building energy code, but moving to net zero energy, water, waste, and carbon buildings. And I'll come to that. The second is the cooling, which has been talked about by many other people. I will try to cover some aspects that probably has not been covered. And the third is related to the behavioral aspects that Melanie has touched upon, which is getting, I think, a lot of interest and attention. And that is also in the context of energy efficiency, but also in the context of demand response program on how cooling loads can actually be turned as a resource for managing the grid in a flexible manner. So starting with something that people have alluded to about COVID. So in a warming world, I think it is not unthinkable to divide the world's population along the lines of heat inequality between the cool haves and the hot have-nots. And this was brought home to many folks in India by one of the most defining images of the COVID-19 crisis, showing Indian migrant workers attempting to go back on foot from Delhi or other parts of the world to their home states, braving India's scorching weather when temperature was soaring up to about 47 degrees Celsius. And that leads me to what the countries may be doing to create climate resilience shelters. Today, we are talking about COVID-19. Tomorrow, we can be talking about a cyclone in the Bay of Bengal. And day after tomorrow, we can be talking about uncontrolled flooding in urban areas or in the river basins of India. And what we feel is that a new class of buildings need to be built out, I think, all over India, which needs to be climate resilient and which also needs to be net zero energy, water and waste buildings. But these are increasing trends in regulations for new buildings, but which cannot happen without government exceptional leadership. And is it possible for building energy codes, which are currently struggling to become mainstream in India, to start to think how can we actually start to incorporate net zero energy, water and waste ambitions for the climate resilient centers that we want to build out in the future, not just housing. The other thing that I would like to talk about where India has shown some exceptional leadership is access to cooling can be an effective means of preventing fatalities caused by extreme heat stress. Unfortunately, people living in tropical and subtropical regions have dramatically lower access to cooling. And we feel that government leadership mandating thermal comfort for all in the building design and construction for all affordable housing schemes must become a new norm. We simply cannot build buildings that will become inhospitable to live from day one. This kind of madness must stop now. India's India Cooling Action Plan, I think, is a great initiative. It almost, I was looking at the 10 recommendations and I saw that it touches upon all the 10 recommendations made by the Global Commission, from public sector leadership to engaging all parts of society, to creating green jobs, to leveraging behavioral insights, just to name a few. And it is setting India on a path of sustainable cooling future, and it has the potential to deliver many socio-economic benefits while leading the world by example towards climate action. India has probably issued a first behavioral science-based policy directive asking the set point temperature to be set at 24 degrees Celsius in all government buildings, but also as a guideline for all air-conditioned buildings, based on empirical studies proving that widespread prevalence of adaptive thermal comfort that not only leads to more passive cooling features to be incorporated, but can lead to cooling being accepted as a demand resource by utilities, regulators, and load dispatch centers. Global Cooling Prize, I talked briefly about. It is launched in India jointly by Department of Science and Technology, Government of India, and Rocky Mountain Institute. It set out to reduce the climate impact of room air conditioners by 5x. Think about it. We are not talking 5%, 10%, 20%, or even 50%. We are talking a 500% improvement in the climate impact of this very, very important device. Will it achieve this goal? Will the world see a technology that will be 5x more climate friendly? Will this lead to use of natural or green refrigerants being used in room air conditioners? AEEE, as an operating council member of Global Cooling Prize, I do not have answers to these questions, but I do know that Global Cooling Prize is already disrupting the market, and it will likely have a major impact on the future standards and labeling policies as countries will raise the ambition and will likely mandate eco-label that will set greenhouse gas emissions as the performance indicator. Government, on the other hand, I believe must provide incentives and encourage companies such as the 8 shortlisted companies consisting of Godrej, Daikin, Gree, Infosys, etc., to embrace innovation and set policies that will reward them for developing environmental friendly products. Lastly, I'm going to just briefly touch upon that why thermoregulation is so important, not just, I think, at our building level, where a 2-3 degrees Celsius can lead to hypothermia or hyperthermia with disastrous circumstances, but a 2 or 3 degrees Celsius, I think a temperature difference on our planet can make planet Earth either go back to ice age, or it can make a watery grave for most of us. So what does a 2 to 3 degrees Celsius rise in temperature do for our energy system? And this is one area where we think demand response program and the contribution of energy efficiency community on how to use energy efficiency and demand response as a flexible grid resource is something that is largely untapped, definitely in India. Of course, there are success stories around the world, but we believe that if application of demand response, a proven tool to manage peak demand, can effectively help India handle its burgeoning peak power demand, which has grown about 25% per year in Delhi for the last 5 years. The value proposition is fourfold, in my opinion: savings in the form of energy itself, avoided costs of overall grid improvements, including more thermal power generation when they can become an stranded assets in future, avoidance of costlier spot power procurement, and having more options for green balancing. In summary, I'm going to quote one of my favorite quotes by George Bernard Shaw, which is, "Reasonable people adapt themselves to the world. Unreasonable people attempt to adapt the world to themselves. Hence, all progress, therefore, depends on unreasonable people." In that vein, I want that the entire energy efficiency community to become a little more unreasonable. Otherwise, we will end up becoming dreamers, people and organizations with good ideas, but very little actual transformative power. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Satish. And I think you just brought us back to that subject of behaviour change, which seems to be gaining a great deal more prominence at the moment. And now it's my great pleasure to move on to China and to ask Sanjing for the China Council for an Energy Efficient Economy to talk to us briefly about this issue of supporting Chinese action on energy efficiency. How much is that local? How much is shared from best practice? And hopefully after that we'll have some time for a couple of questions from our audience, because we're getting quite a lot of questions in. But first, Sanjing, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Melanie, and thank you for the sharing from other panelists. And firstly, I would like to extend my thanks to the IEA for your continuous efforts to leading the discussion on energy efficiency worldwide. And regarding my organization, China Council for an Energy Efficient Economy, CCEEE, it is a China-based non-profit organization, which is similar to ACEEE and ACEEE, but it's a little bit different. We serve we work in China to integrate the domestic and international resources to build up a platform that facilitate the in-depth exchange and collaboration in energy efficiency, technology, policy management, finance, and best practice. And we also provide some research service and consultation to the government. And just now, Melanie mentioned that China is a manufacturing factories in the world. So actually, after the breakout of the COVID-19, China is the first country to take the lockdown measures, which also bring very profound and lasting influence on the economy in China. So here I would like to, I feel very happy to share with everyone about the energy efficiency update and also the opportunities that we see could integrating the energy efficiency improvement into the economic stimulus plan in the context of COVID-19. As we all know, the breakout of the COVID-19 has become a global crisis, and it even changed the way we live and how we behave. China is no exception. And it also had big influence on the social development, especially on economy and on the as well as energy consumption. We know many countries has put forward the economic recovery plan, and after the breakout of the COVID-19. So what happened in China? Actually, I just mentioned that the influence in China is very big. You know, the GDP growth in the first quarter, in the first season, I mean, has been decreased by 6.8%. And especially for the industry sectors, the decrease has climbed up to the 10%. So it has a very big influence. So to stimulate the economy is maybe becomes the most important, the priority for the central government or for the local government. So after in the end of March, the central government, I mean the top leaders meeting, during the top leaders meeting, they decided to enlarge the investment. And in the middle of the April, the key 4 areas for the investment has been identified, including the retrofit of old buildings, infrastructure construction, upgrade of traditional industries, and encouragement on the strategic development of strategic emerging industries. And after that, although there is no direct investment plan from central government, but according to the data and information we find out, up to this month, maybe about 25 provinces, I mean the local government, has announced their investment plan in the next 3 to 5 years. So do you know how big is it? According to those announcements, by 2025, there will be in total 50 trillion RMB, along with 22,000 projects will be invested into the 4 areas I mentioned just now in China. So if we go deeper to the announcement, we will find that for the infrastructure investment part, instead of simply turning to the traditional, I mean the old investment stimulus plan, the country now promotes a new round of infrastructure construction through reform and innovation. So it's a very hot words in China now. It's called new infrastructure, which is characterized by information technology and digitalization. It includes the 5G base station, the big data center, the integrated Internet of Things, the AI technology, and the charging station for new and renewable vehicles, and the high-speed train and urban transit. So yeah, you may think the new infrastructure investment will be high value added and less energy intensive industry compared to the traditional one. Yeah, for sure it is. So, but you know, for the rest of for the new infrastructure investment only accounts for 15 to 20% of the total investment. So seeing maybe 15 trillion RMB for the new infrastructure investment. So at least 8% of the total investment will still go to the traditional field areas, which I mentioned just now, like the traditional infrastructure and the retrofit of old buildings, and also the traditional industries. So we can see that along with the investment and project implementation, the energy demand in China will go up in next 3 to 5 years, obviously. Actually, in the past 5 years, in the past decades, China did a good job in the energy conservation and the carbon emission reduction. So now in the new time, maybe in the context of the COVID-19, it is a big challenge for China to improve the energy efficiency. But in other way, it also brings us opportunities to integrate the energy efficiency improvement to the investment plan. So the good news is that from the top leaders, they still pay much attention, put more importance on the green development and the green transition. And energy efficiency improvement is the basis of the green development. So in China, in the context of the COVID-19, how to make this basis stronger? So from my perspective, I think maybe we to make the continual efforts to improve the energy efficiency, we may have the following efforts to do. The first is, I think it's very necessary to delivering the early stimulus plan impacts to the decision makers, like the new infrastructure investment I mentioned just now. Actually, we should bring the high leaders to aware of the high energy consumption of the 5G and big data centers. And the second, maybe we hope the central government could set more ambitious target, both for the energy cap and the emission cap for the next 5 years, because this year is the last year. I mean, it's a planning year for the next 5-year plan in China. So it's a good timing to encourage or to help the government to pay attention to set more ambitious target. And the third, we thought, and the other panelist has mentioned just now, we need to ensure and enhance a stricter enforcement of the energy efficiency and energy performance standards in the economic stimulus plan. I mean, in the context of the economic stimulus plan, because we need to enhance the enforcement of the existing standards, like the building standards and the standards for the key industry products. And also we should pay attention to the new standards development for the new infrastructure investment, like the standards for the new built 5G database or the big data centers. So we see in the conclusion, I think it's not easy to integrate the energy efficiency to the economic recovery and stimulus plan, but we saw a great opportunity to do this, especially in the new infrastructure investment. Yeah, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Sanjing. As in always with China, everything's done at great scale, and you have a series of extremely ambitious projects there. We need to finish the session on time, so we won't get into the discussion that we had hoped for, but we have demonstrated through these interventions the opportunities for collaboration, that there are very consistent themes, even if sometimes the implementation is different. So things that are coming through very clearly are the role of the construction and buildings industry in recovery and the jobs that will create, and the opportunities for energy efficiency there. We've had repeated references to better standards, to make sure that we've got we're aggregating markets for building products, for energy using products, for vehicles. So we're making investment easier for industry there. So these themes are coming through from all of the regions and from all of the associations, even if from time to time the implementation on the ground is different, which has been raised by several of the speakers here. So I would like to thank everybody for their contributions to this panel, and this conversation, of course, will continue. Now, we'd just like to end this session with a final Menti question, if we may. So if you could go to the app again. And the question here is, which of energy efficiency's multiple benefits do you think resonates most with people generally? So we have access here, we have mitigating climate change, we have energy security and resilience, we have increasing productivity and competitiveness, lowering energy bills, creating jobs, and making daily life more convenient and comfortable. And the trick here is that we're going to ask you to answer these questions. You'll see these tempting answers start to come in, but the results will be shown at the beginning of the next session, which will take place in an hour's time at 3 o'clock Paris time. And we'll show you what people thought of this question then. So once again, thank you everybody for your contributions to this really interesting conversation. And we'll see you in an hour.
Thank you.
Grazie, ciao, ciao.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you, bye.
Thank you all.